Hello everyone and welcome to episode 67 of Podcast of Five Rings, your source of enlightenment in the realm of video games, tabletop, anime, film, and tech. Each episode of Podcast of Five Rings releases Monday mornings on iTunes and SoundCloud, and topic by topic, day by day on YouTube, with the full video releasing on Friday. To catch updates about the podcast or for other news, give us a follow on your social media platform of choice, listed in the description below. I'm your host, GM, and overseer of Podcast of Five Rings, Obsidian, joined tonight by the wall that will not fall, Tetsuo.
I'm back for now.
He's back.
Before he gets sent back.
Where'd he go?
To the abyss.
Yeah.
Back to the front lines.
Back to Vegas, gambling all that baby
I
money.
know, right?
How was your trip to Vegas?
It was good. The whole business side was great, but I mean, I guess Vegas is known for its eating
Buffets.
Yeah, I didn't really know that. I only went to like one or two buffets, but we went to a bunch of different restaurants, and everything I ate was just fantastic. I think my favorite place, so there was this, they called it the Nine Fine Irishmen, and it was this Irish pub restaurant. And I kid you not, the chicken pot pie and the shepherd's pie come in full-size bucket pails, and it's like the size of your head plus, and you're just like, holy crap.
Well, I love both of those things, so.
So good.
Jesus.
We got the Dark Fortune Duelist meta.
Oh, hi. I didn't see you come in.
The Beat Man.
Take a seat. Would you like some cookies? I've got some milk in the fridge with it.
I always want milk and cookies.
Can I just take a glass of milk?
Yeah, sure, you can have a glass of
Delicious malt. the resident wild card who denies his wild card status. Mao. I'm gonna reject your wild. Give me back your wild card. You're getting deported back to Normieville.
No.
But you wouldn't expect that from a wild card, so doesn't that still play into his wild cardness?
Hey.
You can't take it away.
He pleads the fifth.
He does. He has to plead the fifth.
He pleads the fifth. He'll only speak with you to you with immunity.
So this is our spooky episode. Spooky in quotes with a question mark.
I don't know if it's
exclamation
like
question mark. I mean, it just kind of turned out that way, right?
we've got more episodes to go for this month. Those could be spooky as well.
But don't you know we celebrate Halloween? We start celebrating that stuff in like August now.
Hey, I saw a commercial for Christmas shit today, so
Yeah, some places already have the Christmas stuff out.
They do.
Yep.
I've gone to some stores and they have both Halloween and Christmas stuff up at the same time. I'm like, are you fucking kidding?
Okay,
No.
so our Hallow Xmas episode, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. My topic is gonna be what do you all want for Christmas? That's gonna be my topic.
Cole.
Coal, so that I can
coal?
fuel the fire to keep my family warm this cold Christmas.
All right, Tets, you got the first spooky topic, so
Okay.
spook me.
On a scale of 1 to
it might be-
skeleton.
it might be setting the bar kind of low, though. It's not that spooky. My wife and I picked up a new game when I got back from Las Vegas, the Arkham Horror card game. I know
That's
Lovecraft
pretty
isn't
spooky.
all that scary, but
Yeah, bro. I was gonna say that's not scary at all.
Yeah, I know.
no, it's actually been a card game I've been wanting to get for a long time and just never had an opportunity to until now. So that made me happy.
Wait, quick questions for you before you
Yes.
start.
Yes.
Is this the new one or is this like an older version of it?
I didn't know there were two versions.
Yeah, I
so
think there are
there's,
two
there's
versions, yeah.
3 total card games. One of them I forget. I don't know much about. It's like 80s. Then there was one, the Call of Cthulhu card game, which I think Fantasy Flight partially did, but it was a collectible card game, so it was a CCG. And then the newest one, the Arkham Horror card game, is a LCG under Fantasy Flight.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure I knew which one we were talking about because I know there was a couple out there, and I was like,
Yep.
I don't remember.
Yeah, this one's in the same vein as the Arkham Horror, Eldritch Horror, and Elder Sign board games that
Yeah.
Fantasy Flight has put out. In fact, it shares some of the artwork with them, which I'm
Not
okay
surprised.
with. But yeah, it's kind of like you could have done it, but at the same time, it's good artwork. I mean,
Hey, if you got a good asset, use it.
exactly. I mean, it's it's kind of standard LCG fare. You buy sets. The sets are specific cards. It'll never vary. Um, and you'll build your deck, and then you and a teammate, well, you and another person will play. But where it varies from all the other LCGs, and this is why I've been wanting to get my hands on it, besides the fact that it's Lovecraft, is that it's cooperative. It's not competitive. Well, I guess it could be competitive if you
Isn't there can't you play like the horror factions though? If I recall,
say again.
can't you play like the other there's multiple factions you could play as, right?
No, not in this one. You have different classes you can play as depending on what investigator you choose. Limits what card you can put into your deck. But the forces of evil, the whatever your scenario is going to be, is actually controlled by what they call this agenda deck. So the main way to further the game, there's an agenda deck and an act deck. And you want to progress the act deck because that's essentially moving on the story, right? Like acts, like chapters. And so they're generally good for the investigators. Maybe not necessarily. They can cause bad things to happen, but they're generally good.
But what if I want to cause everybody to go insane?
Well, you can do that by A, just playing badly, but then B, you have
By being a scrub.
Well, and then,
by being terrible at the game, you could probably do that.
yeah, well, I mean, I'm not entirely kidding, and also the chance, which I'll get to how they handle chance in a minute, which is also really cool. But so the other deck is called the agenda deck, and that is the agenda of whatever dark, shadowy, evil Cthulhian forces you're fighting. This scenario.
Sounds like the deck I want to play.
Yeah, well, it's usually only 2 or 3 cards. Same with the act deck, because they are like once you complete this thing, flip the card and do the next card. Whereas the agenda is if you don't complete something, or if say this monster happens to enter this room or something like that, then the agenda deck goes forward. One of the other ways that the agenda deck goes forward is by the accumulation of doom tokens. So essentially, you have in addition to those, there are what's called the encounter deck. Now, this is pulled from automatically based off of different rules, different cards, locations, etc. But so you have location cards that you move your investigator around, and you're trying to unravel clues. And then, as I said, sometimes the agenda might say, "All right, you're going to flip an encounter card," and suddenly you have like 6 ghouls that pop out in the hallway, and you're like, "Oh shit, I'm dead," whatever. But what I thought was really neat was, again, the way that they handle chance. There's no dice rolling in this game, but instead they have this thing called the chaos bag, where you put in these tokens, and depending on the scenario and the difficulty you want to play on, will determine different tokens to put in. And so every time you would do an action, you will reach into the bag. You'll add up all your points based off of your strength, agility, wisdom, whatever, and then grab into the bag. And then there's usually like 1 or 2 positive, and then like 10 plus negative chips in there. And so whatever the chip says, that's your modifier, and it can be anything from like a +2 to a -10. So usually the chaos bag makes things worse for you. Rather than better, but there's always that chance. And then there's like the Elder Sign, which if you played any other Final Fantasy,
Final Fantasy is well known for
Cthulhu. I will do this. I told you I will do this every time. Fantasy Flight. If you played any of their previous Arkham games, they love to include the Elder Sign as a central mechanic.
Yeah.
And so each investigator has a special ability where if you draw that Elder Sign, you get the special ability. It just happens instantaneously. And so essentially it goes, in each round you get to choose which player acts first, but all of the players act, and then all the monsters act, and then you possibly get your encounters, redraw, untap, etc., reset. So that's kind of the cycle of the game. And the main point is to try to finish the act before the agenda runs out.
So what kind of like actions and cards do you play? Or
So
I assume you have a deck, one deck at least.
Yeah, so how it plays into the LCG factor, you will build your own deck, and if you just buy the single core set, 2 people can play, and unfortunately you can't play every combination of investigator, because each investigator is one of the 5 classes, and then has one of the other classes as a subclass. So what that means is, whatever your main class is, you have access to all of those cards, but your subclass, you only get some of them. You can't fully level up your subclass as you can your main. Which the level up I'll get to in a second too, but that's one of the other really cool things about this game. But so you each build your decks, and then and as I said, in the core set, up to 2 people can play, but it's built to be 2 to 4 players. Or actually, sorry, 1 to 4 players. You can play this game by yourself. If you do so, I do recommend you kind of start out at least on normal, unless you are severely masochistic, because the game is hard. It is pretty difficult, as the Arkham games tend to be. So you come in and you each have your decks. But what's cool is, so as I've been talking about these scenarios, different packs will have so many scenarios built in, and they'll usually include a piece of paper for you to like record your progress on, because the scenarios will be like, as I said, 2 or 3, and as you complete them, you'll gain experience points. You can then use those experience points to buy cards that, because you can't include every card in your deck, right? You have to, some of them will say they cost this much experience, so you spend those experience points on those cards to make your deck better. So you level up between scenarios, and then if you want to string campaigns together, you can. But where it comes to the turnaround is that you can take permanent, they call it trauma, physical and mental trauma, which means you start the game with however much trauma on your health or sanity. So like we played it in our first game, and at the end of the first scenario, the character I was playing had 4 sanity, and at the end of the first scenario, I had 2 mental trauma. So I had 2 sanity for the rest of the campaign.
Oof.
At max.
Ooh.
We somehow won, but oh my goodness, was it intense.
So is it you and your... Oh, go ahead, Meta, sorry.
I was going to say, it's like, what does... You mentioned it like as leveling up. Are there any benefits to this, or?
Yeah, so the cards that you can buy with those experience points are either better versions of cards you already have. Okay. So one case and example that I can remember off the top of my head, there's a card called Beat Cop, which you can play. So with cards, you have events and assets. Assets you play, they stay on the field. Events instantaneous. One of the asset types is an ally. So the Beat Cop is an ally, and so he can take damage for you. Instead of you taking it, put it on him and kill him off.
You there, jump in front of the bullet.
Yeah, pretty much.
You got it, boss.
But he also has an ability where you can sacrifice him to immediately do 1 point of damage to a monster in the same location as you. Similar type thing. Hey, go shoot that monster for me. See what happens.
It feels like it ends very poorly for him.
I'm just gonna throw the guy at the monster.
He's struggling seemed to hurt it though. He stabbed it a little bit.
Yeah. But so when you level him up, he actually gets more life. He costs 1 less to play. And instead of having to kill him to do 1 damage, you can just tap him.
Ooh.
So, but the level up difference between that, you have to spend like 4 or 5 experience points. I forget how many. He's a large level up for that one.
It sounds like a lot of the strategy of the game then is what do you level up when? It sounds like.
Can you choose not to level up and instead not take the penalties that come with that, or like the permanencies of things, or do you just it's an automatic mechanic? You just have to level up and take it.
Well, if you're playing a campaign, you don't have to spend the experience points, but it's like an RPG, right? Like it sits in your pail of experience points until you want to spend them.
Well, I meant like in the campaign, like do you like if you say I don't. Is it possible just to go in like with a new character, new clean slate, or is it
you could
stick with that one character and you have to?
You could theoretically, and you could even play a campaign where each scenario you just play it as its own standalone scenario.
Okay.
But you do lose something there, right? And so
yes, you would lose the ability to level up and whatnot. So
right, and whenever you get knocked out in a scenario, you don't actually, you're not dead for the next 2 or however many remaining scenarios of the campaign. That's one of the ways to take trauma. So if you get taken out by losing all of your health, you'll take 1 physical trauma. If you get taken out by mental, you'll take 1 mental trauma.
I'm guessing there are also cards that can just give you trauma from the enemy, or is there actions, events that can happen that can do that?
Not cards, but so one of the cool things is, depending on how you play, both of those decks, as I talked about, can give you a different resolution. Sometimes there are as many as 4 or 5 resolutions based off of how you completed things. Did you complete this card without gaining these cards? Did you gain these cards but not kill this guy? That type of thing. So you can get different resolutions. And some resolutions can also put trauma on you. And that's why I say, like, finishing the act deck without, touching the agenda is quote-unquote generally better for you, because you don't get as much trauma. But it still can sometimes say, all right, spawn in this monster. He's right behind whoever, his turn finished and spawned him in, type deal. So it can still be bad, but generally speaking, you're not going to be getting those trauma at the end of each of the resolutions.
So how does it work? I'm assuming when you play cooperative, you take turns playing. Like, can they interact with your cards on your turn and stuff?
So... well, one of the it's one of the quote unquote rules, but it's not. I guess not necessarily. You don't have to follow it. Is you can't see what the other person has in their hand, and they encourage you to stay in character. Don't say, "Oh, I have a machete. If you go attack him, I can come up behind you and tap this for 3 damage."
Gotcha.
It's I can back you up. I have a bladed, whatever. But if you talk to each other and see what is in each other's hands, no big deal. But on your turn, at the beginning of each round, you can decide who goes first. But that person has to take all 3 of... So you get 3 actions. And that person will have to take all 3 of their actions that turn before you go. But you can take any number of actions. Or, there's like a list. There's a little card. I can't remember. It's like attack, move. You can investigate to try to find clues. You can... different... actions cost things. Playing cards is an action, that kind of thing. And so you can do as many of those as you want that adds up to 3, and then the other person has to go. But there are cards that like give you more actions, or says, you...
Okay. Just silence.
I think the Eldritch Horror's got him, guys.
Well, moving on. Hobbs' topic. Or no. Nope.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can hear you now.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
right now.
Golly, when did I cut out?
Cthulhu got you. That's what we're saying.
Wait, when did I cut
like
out?
20 seconds ago, maybe?
Okay, so so you get the 3 actions. You can do any order of the actions that you... all of yours before the other person can go, was essentially it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I was saying that there's some cards that will say these actions don't cost you a full action. You can use them as maybe a fast action or a reactionary thing, or you don't use up an action to do this type of thing. That there's a few cards that do that. They're fewer and far between. But you can discuss with each other like what you...
So cards say like investigate, and you take an investigate action, or is that how it works? Nope, I think he's gone again.
Yeah.
Curse you, Cthulhu.
His headphones got him.
Yeah, hello?
All right.
Yep.
I can hear you.
Okay. All right.
Did you hear what I asked?
Yeah, I did.
You roboted. He's gone again. Oh my gosh. Poor Tet. It's always
Poor
Tets
Tet.
with the
Always
technical
Tets.
difficulty.
I know. He does nothing to deserve this.
I
He's a
know.
good pet.
Wow.
He's a good defender of the wall.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So yeah, you investigate. That's a mechanic in the game. You play it. And
That's
it
a
does,
good mechanic.
It does
Generally,
stuff.
that's a good mechanic for any game.
Arkham Horror.
You get attack. Attacking's good. It kills stuff.
You can
Arkham
apparently
Arkham Horror the game.
kill your allies for your personal gain.
That's great.
All right, you're back now.
Am I back?
Yes.
Yep.
For
Okay.
now.
For now.
For now.
Quick,
Me crab, me no like technology.
talk faster.
But so with the investigate action, though, so that's an action you can take because whenever you reveal a location, it'll have so many clues on it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can take the investigate action to try to discover some of those clues. But some cards will say and take an investigate action, so then at the end you will get a clue, but then it'll also say, like, gain a bonus this many points, or, you know, instead of rolling for the clue, just automatically gain it, that kind of thing. So sometimes they'll say that instead, or they'll say, like, you can take a fight action, or you can play a card that takes a fight action, but then you get the +2 attack, or whatever the card ends up being.
Yeah.
So that's how that kind of works. And so in order, usually to further the act deck, you want clues. Clues will usually be what you use.
What are some examples of things you need to do?
Okay, so in one of the games how do I do it without spoilers? Because the game is really good, but it can easily be spoilery. So in the first scenario that's in the Corp set, the first time the game starts, you're actually in one of the characters' house. You can choose whoever's it is. And suddenly the door to the study disappears and you're locked inside of the study, and so you have to get out. That's the first act card. And to pass it on, you just need to get 2 clues. Well, there's 2 clues in the room. So you just pass 2 investigate actions, you discover what happened to the door, and you further the act deck.
Disappeared.
What happened?
I won't spoil necessarily what happens there, but it's
Yeah.
from there, I should say. But that one's really fun. That one's really interesting.
Will some be like kill monster, like certain monsters?
Yes.
Or...
Yeah, one of them is kill this monster before this agenda card comes up. There's another one that is... So I got one of the side scenario packs, The Curse of the Rougarou, which takes place in Louisiana, in the bayou, and you're pretty much trying to hunt down this werewolf, or Rougarou as they call it. And as you get to the end, you kind of have a few options presented to you. So, like, one of the courses you can end up taking is trying to track it down and kill it, or you can try to capture it. You can try talking to the guy and convincing him to not be a werewolf anymore. I don't really know. I didn't go down that path, so I don't know what happened.
You know, you were like
Stop.
Anthropy. Just get rid of it.
So, and that was one of the other cool things. So there's a few cards that you have like a deck size you have to stay to. But depending on what you do, sometimes you'll get cards that permanently go into your deck that don't count towards that cap number. So like in the first scenario, or the first campaign we played, I actually got 2 cards that permanently went into my deck, whereas in the Rougarou one, my wife actually got a card to permanently use.
So it's like half deck builder too, almost.
Yeah, a little bit. It's more deck builder in the sense that, like, Magic the Gathering is deck building. Like, the deck building isn't necessarily part of a core mechanic, but it is an aspect of play. But it was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to getting more of the scenario packs and seeing more of the stories. They are very they stay very true to the Lovecraftian feel. It's not like, oh, you're suddenly fighting Azathoth and somehow fighting Azathoth. No, that's not happening. You are trying to prevent them from even so much as ringing his phone, or otherwise you're doomed.
Lots of cultists, it sounds like, right?
Yeah, well, at least the ones we played had a good number of them. But yeah, so that made me happy though, because sometimes you get like Lovecraftian games that say they're Lovecraftian, and they, because they have Cthulhu in it, and then you end up driving a boat firing cannons at Cthulhu because that's somehow going to do something. Like,
The game did not go how the GM thought it would go.
Exactly.
That meme, I love those. The what I'm running, what I thought it was going to be, what it actually was.
Yep.
Meme, I love those.